Hello and welcome to 60 Minutes or Less, a podcast from Birthday Cake for Breakfast. I'm Andy Hughes, and for episode 41, we look to NYC royalty as we feature an interview with Keith Murray, guitarist and vocalist in the brilliant We Are Scientists. Along with bassist Chris Kane, Keith Murray has been co-steering the good ship We Are Scientists for over 20 years now, the pair cementing themselves across 9 studio albums and various assorted releases as indie rock royalty. July 2025 saw the release of their latest album, Qualifying Miles, but 2025 also marks a few anniversaries for We Are Scientists, with it being 15 years on from the release of third album, Barbara, and amazingly, 20 years of their debut album, With Love and Squalor. With celebrations in store for the anniversaries and the new record, we thought it only right to reconnect with Keith, having had the band appear on Birthday Cake for Breakfast in one form or another over the past decade. We caught up with Keith over Zoom on the morning of the new album's release to talk about thrash metal, the longevity of their friendship, the pair having met at a Dawson's Creek viewing party, and the top 8 bands of all time. If you like the episode, let us know. Follow us on your favourite streaming platform, where we encourage you to give us a 5-star rating, and follow Birthday Cake for Breakfast on all the socials. Right, on to Keith Murray. Enjoy.
Do you prefer that I be horizontal? Does it make a difference to you?
It's too early for that, Keith. No,
Nah.
we're not doing videos, so whatever works for you.
Okay, sounds good.
Where do we find you? How's it going?
It's going well. We're in London. We've been doing a week of promo leading up to the album coming out today. So yeah, gee, I'm sleeping in a bunk bed. Fortunately, by myself. I mean, that's the height of luxury. 2 beds for one guy.
Do you switch it up like one day you'll sleep up top, the next day you'll sleep down below?
I initially thought that I was gonna do that, but as with most things in life, routine got the best of me, and I've just been a bottom bunk guy, and the top bunk has been a wonderful storage space.
Are the other guys like sleeping on the floor next to you whilst you're in the bunk bed and you're just not giving them any space?
No, I wish that were the case. I booked the Airbnb, and so I sort of felt like the sharing issue where like one person can cut the cake and then the other person chooses the slice. I booked the Airbnb, so I sort of let them have the, well, let's be honest, much better rooms.
Very kind of you after all these years.
That sort of diplomacy is the only way to keep a band together this long.
So you're in London, you seem to be a regular fixture over here, particularly in London, and you've been here all this week doing promo. Have you been able to get out and do anything else? Have you been doing other stuff or?
Yeah, I was very, very excited about the number of nights that we theoretically were going to have off this week. Made a lot of plans with a lot of people. Did absolutely none of it. We've been so busy doing album setup stuff that we legitimately have not really left this Airbnb or like a 2 block radius of it. Fortunately for our health, there is not a good bar anywhere near our Airbnb. So it's been a pretty healthy little week for us. We're doing a week of in stores now. That's going to destroy us. It's going to be good.
When you come to London normally, I'm sure it's for a lot shorter of an amount of time because you might just be doing shows and stuff. Is there anything that you particularly want to, do when you do come over? Like, do you go and see your old drummer Andy, or is it just as much as you can pack in?
Yeah, well, Andy lives in the countryside now. So we usually end up if we have like a full day off, we'll make a trip out there. I mean, it's only an hour and change outside of the city, but we usually will end up doing one day out at his house. He was in town last night. He's about to play some shows with KT Tunstall in Europe, just like a long weekend of shows, and they're leaving from near Victoria Station this morning. So our plan last night was that we were going to come meet him down there, but it was the night before the album came out. We ended up doing a lot of admin at our Airbnb. Did not get a hang with Andy. We're also all the way across town. We're like super far north right now. So it was pretty much impossible. Yeah, we're also like super good friends with Tim Wheeler. Tim's usually like Andy and Tim are usually like the two guys that we without fail get to hang out with. I've not seen Tim Wheeler yet. We have Sunday plans. I'm hoping that's gonna pan out.
The elusive Tim Wheeler. He's a very busy guy as
He's a
well, I
Weasley.
imagine.
He's a Weasley little bastard. He's Ely.
He's Ely.
Yeah. Even when you think you've got a grip on him, yeah,
Those Sunday plans could go
he's
up in
out.
smoke.
He's out. That's
So,
true.
so like, you've been rubbing shoulders with Tim and Andy, but you have pretty much been taken to by the UK really early doors into when you guys were playing. What is it about the UK that seems to have stuck, and how does it feel having that relationship with audiences over here? Because it's always, full rooms and people are always so receptive to the new record that comes out around a tour. What do you think it is?
Yeah. I mean, I honestly think a big part of it was sort of a right time, right place situation with our first record. Like just the sound that we were going after was also simultaneously being pretty widely celebrated over here at the time, like even more so than in the United States. So yeah, I think we slotted in with a pretty fun and interesting wave of other bands. And then it was a sheer game of quality on our part afterwards. Once we got our foot in the door, there was no way to get us out. We're like the world's worst house guests. You let us in. Yeah, we're like vampires. You invited us. Now we have the power,
I
and you're
feel
dead.
I feel really sorry for the owner of the Airbnb after you've just said that.
Well, they got lucky that we have to leave for purposes of our own. But yeah, if we did not have all these in stores, this place would be ours.
So the last time we saw you guys was during the anniversary tour for Brain Thrust Mastery, and
Yeah,
you all looked splendid in your tuxedos.
thank you.
Those things are famously not machine washable. So how was it having to combat that? We've taken them out on not every night of the tour. And was there ever any thought that you were thinking, you know what, we look good in the tuxedos, let's just carry this going for all future tours, or was it very much
Yeah, well, first of all, I'm sad to report that indeed there was no dry cleaning going on with those tuxedos. We plowed. I mean, I guess that tour wasn't that long, so it wasn't too many consecutive shows, and you must believe us that our undergarments were being washed. So had it gone on too much longer, the tour bus would have been a very rank space indeed. But yeah, there was something that was very nice about like having to change into a costume to get ready for shows. You kind of like hear artists say that a lot, like putting on a stage costume kind of like gets you into character and is a good way of getting into a show. And sort of our thing has kind of always been hyper casual, like always trying to kind of break down the barrier between the audience and the band. Like we do a lot of chatting on stage to one another and to members of the crowd and stuff. But yeah, there actually was something pretty fun about like yeah, putting on a cape as if you were gonna go stop some crimes. Is that what police wear? Capes?
over here, capes? Yeah,
That's nice.
yeah,
Capes
yeah.
and football helmets. Yeah.
I mean, to be fair, they did actually used to wear capes, but I suppose it would be like you were like the equivalent of like a posh Devo or
Yeah,
similar.
it's true. Yeah, it did make me feel like I was about to perform at the opera. And so precision was key. None of this sloppy rock music.
I imagine the opera would be either much more well attended or much less attended if it was like an indie rock, guitar driven musicality rather than. Although it's been around for
Yeah.
donkeys, so
I'll bet the initial interest would be very high. And then once people saw what that actually meant in practice, participation would plummet.
So you mentioned the new record, the whole point you're in the UK. Qualifying Miles is out today. Congratulations.
Thanks very much.
You've put it out there that it's the ninth studio album from the ninth best band of all time. which I'm
Yep.
sure which
Wow.
I'm
Oh,
sure
we didn't put that out there. That's just the standard knowledge.
that's just what people have come to know that. In
Yeah.
your
These are raw numbers.
you've tracked the data. This is
Yeah, yeah.
say it was you guys that were putting it out there, or say it was common knowledge. If you guys
Okay. I'll
if
play
you
along.
if you yeah, thank you. If you guys are the ninth best band of all time, who would you say comes in with the top eight?
Okay. Um, the Bee Gees are number 7. Neil Diamond is 6. Crosby, Stills, and Nash, no Young are 5. Crosby, Stills, Nash, and Young is 4. Def Leppard is 3. Weezer is 2. Oh, did you see that super group that played at Ozzy Osbourne's farewell show like 2 weeks ago? I think it was like Nuno Bettencourt, Chad Smith, and I forget who else, but those guys were the number one band of all time.
Very fresh top pick.
Yeah, swooped in. Yeah, well, that's really annoying because up until 2 weeks ago, we were the seventh. What were we? Oh, we're the
You
ninth
were
best band
eight.
of all time. Yeah, so until oh, okay, yeah, we were 8 a week and a half ago.
Yeah.
Then this dumb Ozzy Osbourne show happened, knocked us down. You know what? It's the nature of the game. That's how you keep your teeth sharp. We're gonna beat. We've got to work harder so we can beat the Bee Gees and get back up to 8.
I think you're definitely in the running for beating the Bee Gees at this point in time, but like you say, the data will speak for itself.
Yeah, absolutely. This is not subjective.
It's final. Although bands can swoop in, like you say, as well as that being pitched with the record, this also might be just common knowledge amongst the world, but the record's been pitched as a return to the guitar-driven indie rock music that shaped the childhood, or at least the teenage years and stuff of yourself and Chris, and maybe even Keith. What were some of the touchstones that you were all thinking of in that respect, or was it more a kind of a case of that feeling in general of 90s guitar music?
Yeah, I think for Chris and I, a lot of like the lyrics and not the specific emotions, but the general air of like high school personality forming is deeply rooted. And I think in some ways the a lot of the bands that didn't mean the most to us at the time, like at the time, I didn't love Stone Temple Pilots, but for some reason they're the kind of thing I couple with this mode of emotion that we're plumbing, kind of a nagging background thrum of emotion. Whereas like at the time I was very into like metal. I was super into like White Zombie and Marilyn Manson and Sepultura. So yeah, it's sort of a cultural, like a more widespread cultural yearning than even our specific emotional frisson. Interestingly, despite being, quite a few years younger than us, Stone Temple Pilots was a band that we bonded with Keith Karn with pretty early on. Their second album, Purple, is sort of was a staple for all of us and give us a touchstone.
And does Keith come into it much when it comes into that sort of thing, other than, bonding over records and music and stuff? Because obviously Keith's been with you for quite some time now. He seems to be quite integral in terms of that sort of stuff.
Yeah, yeah, he absolutely is, and I would say more so on Qualifying Miles than on at least the past two couple of records, which we actively wanted to use production as kind of a songwriting tool and like a vibe that was out in the forefront of the songs themselves. So on the last two records, we recorded his drums live, but then very heavily treated them and chopped them up and like mix them all around so they didn't quite sound live. And to be fair, we did that with a lot of other elements of those records. Like my vocals on those records are often very highly treated so that they don't necessarily sound just like me singing one take that worked. And yeah, on Qualifying Miles, we were definitely way more interested in making takes that sounded as live as possible, including like having character based errors or non perfections that sort of made it feel more live and in the room, which is good because he is an excellent drummer, and it sometimes did feel like a shame to molest his magnificent drumming by chopping it up and swirling it all around.
Do you find when it comes to your stuff, because live is a big thing of your makeup, as in We Are Scientists makeup, do you think those imperfections are like a really good thing to keep in a lot of the time? Because it does show, doesn't it, that, this is not quite, it's a hard way of saying this without sounding like I'm being offensive to you. But like when you're
I'll
hearing
take it. I
you can always end the call, but when you hear
Yeah.
like little imperfections in music, it feels more real.
Yeah, I mean, I think it just makes like the human connection a little easier. Yeah, for a very long time, every like external producer that we talk to when we're, discussing whether or not somebody else will produce a record, we consistently hear producers tell us, "Oh, you guys are like such." At the very least, they say like you're a super exciting live band. I don't want to say that they do tell us we're an incredible live band, but I think there is something about our live show that is like very, very kinetic and like sort of breathes a different life into the songs. And producers are always saying that what they would like to do is record us in that way and sort of make the albums feel live. And I think we're not really that interested in that as a document of songwriting. Like I think because we are so involved in production, to us, the recorded song is just its own very different art form. Like I do like when bands record pretty raw and punky, but yeah, for us that there's something about making that painting rather than just taking a photograph that is more interesting to us. And we'll always have those live shows where we can commit grievous technical errors at all times.
I liked seeing a couple of years ago in Liverpool where Chris was playing like synth on that tune where he takes the lead,
Uh,
and
yeah.
I like the fact that he was also like cracking a tin at the same time that he was playing. Very, very professional, but also like
Yeah,
very,
I mean,
very real.
if we had recorded that song as a live band, there'd be a guy drinking beer in the middle of it. That's not, and that doesn't really translate on record, I think. That's for the live show.
And when it comes to like, putting out the record, obviously you take out the sound of tins being opened, but do you
Actually, having said that, there you can often hear our beverages in our recordings.
really?
There's there's a song, I think, oh man, on Huffy that I can't think of which song it is, that actually, like, in the intro to the song you can hear the ice tinkling in my glass while I was doing the vocal take. I was definitely having a Mai Tai or something, and that made it in there.
I thought that was like a studio thing, like it was just put in there. Was that actually just getting ready to do
That is absolutely real. That is absolutely real. Yeah, I tend to like to leave that kind of stuff in there. We have an incredible and very professional audio mixer for our records named Claudius Mittendorfer, and he tends to be a little more reasonable about those sort of things. There was a take on a lesson I never learned. That the vocal take originally started with me starting the recording and then realizing that the door to the studio is open, and my studio kind of goes out into the hallway and into a public space, and in the middle of it I slammed the door, and then I was like, that's pretty cool, I like that. He took it out. It definitely did probably like remove you from the song itself and just made you brought you into my house, which isn't really the idea of the song.
Maybe for like a demos outtake disc or something. But does like studio stuff, not those sorts of things, but saying we're gonna look at some of the guitar music from our youth. Does that sort of stuff work itself out as it's being put together, or is that a conscious choice when you're going into making a record?
There have been a handful of times when we've made conscious declarations of what we were going to pursue stylistically, and those never ever worked out. I remember at one point, like for maybe our second record or maybe our third record, we were saying that we wanted to make like a thrash metal record. That did not happen. That did. We're pretty bad at like forcing a direction. So yeah, in this case, it definitely transpired simply because we tend these days we just tend to write huge quantities of songs for every record before we like stop and take stock of everything that we have. And so I think in the case of Qualifying Miles, we simultaneously noticed that there were a crop of songs that indulged in 90s style, but that they were coupled with a handful of songs that lyrically sort of involved memory and nostalgia. So we kind of thought that those two elements combined to at least create the impression of a themed album. I wouldn't quite say this album is an opera or anything, but that yeah, there are definitely more overlapping themes on this record than we usually find ourselves with, unless you count going out late and drinking and pining for women to be themes, which I don't really.
That's just the We Are Scientists bread and butter.
Yeah, that's just life.
What happened to the Fresh record then? Is there ever any of that that's made its way into the world, or
Not yet. I mean, part of our problem is that we always say that we're gonna. Oh, I left you a coffee desk. See, this is the sort of teamwork that creates a lifelong band. I went out and got coffee and brought Chris back some coffee, but he was in his bedroom, and now he's come in and brought me a coffee that he's prepared. So now we're both going to be jacked up on caffeine.
big one for the album launch?
But also, it also demonstrates the poor communication amongst our band.
That's a difficult one. Yeah, feel free to two-hand those cups as well.
Yeah, I'm going to. I'm going to.
But yeah, I mean, did that was there ever thought that I mean, I know you say, like it kind of goes out of the
Mm,
thinking process and you just crack on, but
yeah.
is there ever like a niggling in the back of the brain that says maybe we should go thrash for album 10?
Yeah. I mean, that one specifically, we weren't very good at it. Like that, none of the songs weren't really like. Turns out we're much better at writing songs without trying to force a style. But yeah, we did a project called like it was either called Dump Truck or Dumpster Dive during COVID. I think the project was called the Dumpster Dive and the podcast was called the Dump Truck. I don't know, where we went through a bunch of old songs that we thought were interesting but not worthy of actually being released, and so talked about our old garbage songs. I'm pretty sure one of those songs made it onto the Dumpster Dive. But yeah, I think we're so impatient in general that whenever we have songs that don't make it onto a record only for stylistic reasons, like they don't really suit sitting with the other songs on that record, we always say, "Oh yeah, we're definitely gonna come back and work on that song and re-release it." And then by the time we get a chance to revisit, we're always like, "Let's just write a bunch of new songs. That's more interesting to us right now." So yeah, unfortunately, we do have a very big backlog of really good songs. Chris wrote a bunch of really great songs for this record that purely for stylistic reasons, because a lot of the songs I had written were very like guitar based, and his were a little more synthy. Didn't make it onto this record, and I do really really want us to try to revisit those we have August off, so maybe we'll try to do some hard work on those and get those out pretty quickly before we get too impatient and start writing new songs.
It must be a nice position to be in, though, where you have those good songs to build off and then just say, we'll put them on the pile whilst we just create other stuff. That must be pretty healthy.
Yeah. Yeah, when we especially when we first started out, I mean, probably our first several records when just everything was so busy and also we were deeply undisciplined, we were always just scrambling for songs. Like any time we would finish touring for an album, we'd say, well, okay, we have 0 songs and we'd like to have an album out in a year. I guess we'd better at least write 10 songs. And that is a deeply stressful way to create art. So we're much, much better at writing all the time and not like putting pressure on every song. I mean, that's also part of the thing is like it makes it much more fun to write a song when you don't think that that song has to end up on a record. Like you can, it's very freeing and kind of like makes the process of writing music something that feels more like a hobby than a desperate factory job. And I think it does end up making our records a little more interesting because occasionally, if I start writing a song that on its face wouldn't necessarily fit in the We Are Scientists catalog, ordinarily I would say, well, I don't have time to work on this song because it's not going to be useful to us. Yeah, these days we might end up with something that just ends up being so good that we find a way to fit it into Weird Scientist, like that song "Bought Myself a Grave" that you were mentioning that Chris performed on. I bet that wouldn't have made it on an early We Are Scientist record only because we would have been like, there's no time to work on that. We gotta write a disco pop banger.
It's interesting though, isn't it? Because really it did fit with Huffy. It kind of because that record was
Yeah, yeah.
so allowing of like a melting pot, really. So it really did fortune,
Yeah.
look down on it kind of in a way.
Yeah, and I mean, I think Huffy felt that way because we had been writing so like freely and extensively. I think that was really the first record where we felt like the fruit of having decided that we were just going to write songs constantly and not simply as album creation process.
The We Are Scientists factory, yeah.
Yeah. I think also having COVID downtime sort of let us dive into the deeper catalog in a way maybe we normally wouldn't have. So that was, yeah, it was a crossroads of availability, I would say.
And that kind of, led into you said at the time that Huffy represented you guys the most of any of your albums. The reaction to it must have made that even more sweet, given how much people were enjoying it. With the new record and the record that followed Huffy, it must be nice to be able to learn from what you've done with Huffy and be able to build on that and, keep this representation of what you guys are about rather than, as you say, just keep on pushing out the hits.
Yeah, I think both Lobes and Qualifying Miles are much more specific records than Huffy was. I do kind of think of them as a trio with Huffy sort of being like the tip of the pyramid and Qualifying Miles and Lobes being on kind of either side of a spectrum that Huffy incorporates. Yeah, I don't know. Also, I do think that just the nature for us of working on music and specifically albums is kind of wanting to do not for the sake of making something different, but I think wanting to do something different after having completed a project, being like, okay, we did that. Now what else is interesting to us? So yeah, it is funny to like map the stylistic arc of those, like Huffy kind of being an exploration of everything we can do, Lobes being a very specific, like synth and electronic focused pop project, and then qualifying miles veering way more into mid-tempo, contemplative kind of rock. I don't know what our next move is going to be. I'm excited.
What you said about the new record, where that's ventured to. Once upon a time, you
Mhm.
you did a feature for us, and you mentioned how you were embracing the bridge of a song,
Oh
mildly
yeah.
mildly tongue in cheek, I'm sure, but also, it was very specific in that song. Whereas this time, I appreciate press releases are fluff sometimes, but you've suggested in one song that you were leaning more into minor key balladry. And on Joe Wiley, and on Joe Wiley this week, you did a cover of Broken Wings. There is like, like an icy 80s vibe running through some of these songs. Was that like conscious, or was that just a case of where you were and where the songs were heading?
Yeah, I think that part of that is that in the middle of writing this record, Chris and I got super interested in the concept of the 80s power ballad. We haven't really approached it yet. We do actually have an 80s power ballad in our catalog that we just have no idea how to deploy. It definitely does not fit on any record. But yeah, we have a Substack that we work pretty frequently on that often involves fiery debate. And so we had a debate about what even constitutes a power ballad. And for whatever reason, that conversation really stuck with us both. And so we were for Joe Wiley, we were really debating whether we wanted to cover Broken Wings or Love Bites. We ended up playing Def Leppard's version of Love Bites, which I think was probably for the best. There's way more shrieking in Love Bites than I am ordinarily comfortable delivering. But yeah, I do think that sort of self-aware moodiness of a of an 80s power ballad, it did influence qualifying miles a little bit.
As Chris walks in with a third coffee.
Ah, I can't drink any more coffee.
With the new record, we've talked about what's gone into it and what's influenced from the sides and such. And you've mentioned that there's been a feeling, lyrically that's cropped up, and there's some melancholy moments in the music and the lyrics. And some of that's come back from looking back on the history of the band and, just looking back in time anyway. You said you were curious about, how and when we as people decide to be nostalgic and what things you focus on and what gets overlooked. Was the look back anniversary related, or was it something else that, was it just a case of, as we do as people, just looking back on things over time?
Yeah, well, so it was definitely not the latter. Like I'm not particularly prone to being very nostalgic or enamored of the past. But yeah, I part of what had me thinking this way was all of the anniversary action that We Are Scientists has been involved in recently. We re-released three records in like the past 3 or 4 years, and that involved a lot of like going through old hard drives for files and like recordings and like emails with old coworkers and friends and bandmates that I just haven't spoken to or thought of in ages. And it was really weird to like pour through all of that and just see how like every day I was talking to all these people multiple times a day, and I was like, what? I legitimate and not because I don't like them or anything, but I just was like, yeah, this person isn't in my daily life anymore, and so I never ever think about them. And if you had told me that 15 years ago, I would not have believed you. And sort of it overlapped with my specifically my mom has a real mania about every time I go visit my parents at home, she becomes desperate for me to go through. There are a handful of boxes of my old stuff under their staircase, and she's like, please go through this box and get rid of stuff. Like, you guys live in a house that they still live in the house that my sister and I grew up in, so it's too big a house for two people, or at least they thought it was okay for four people, and now there are two people in that house. But my mom insists. And so maybe last Christmas when I was there, I was just going through a box of high school stuff. and there were just like notes from kids that I went to high school with, or like looking through a yearbook and reading the messages in the back of the yearbook of like people whose communication with me was very effusively connected, and I barely remembered like who they were. And it was just weird to me to recognize what a different cognitive person I was back then. Yeah, I think it was just like thinking about those things a lot, like not even thinking about the past, but thinking about the present version of me in relation to past Keith Murray, and what how little those two people had in common in terms of just like the figures that seem important to them was weird to contemplate.
And it must be strange as well because, like you say, you have these people that you were spending time with who now you may not even remember who they were as a person and what have you. And they've gone on to live parallel lives as well with you.
Yeah,
But it's so strange, isn't
right.
it, that they just go in completely different paths. And yeah,
Yeah, and again, it's less that like, oh, I know we're different people now, and we'll always cherish that time we had. It's legitimately that once this person was my very best friend, and we did everything together, and we were like inseparable. And now I'm like, oh yeah, I wonder what happened to that guy. Where I think he lives in San Francisco, but I don't know. I haven't talked to him in 8 years. I hope he's well.
from a band point, there will have been, because you guys have been together for 20 plus years, there obviously will be people that move on to different things or get out of the business altogether. So was that kind of yeah, was that kind of like a refresh? Did it open the floodgates with that sort of thing in terms of going, oh yeah, we used to, like you've got your haven't you got your original drummers playing with you soon?
We no, so we have done some shows with Michael, but we haven't very recently. No.
Oh no,
Um
it was another drummer. I think he might have been in
uh
the
let's see. I mean, we pretty much consistently have Andy Burroughs join in anytime we're all in the same space. Oh, Danny Lee Allen, who drummed with us on tour for Barbara and some of TV en Francais, has a project now, and he is opening up for us at our Qualifying Miles album celebratory show in New York in 2 weeks, I guess. He has a project called Soft Focus. Hilariously, he now lives in Miami, which is where I grew up. So now, like when I go down and visit my family, it feels like an even more bizarre and hallucinatory trip down memory lane, because our drummer Danny, who is Australian and who I only knew, in New York City, now is like part of, and he is like friends with my parents now. They hang out every once in a while. It's very weird, but yeah, we're very very excited for Danny's performance as well. I've never actually seen him do the Soft Focus live, so this will be cool.
and I mean obviously that seems nuts that he's now, friends with your parents and stuff, but obviously he would have been connected to you guys anyway because of the band and the live stuff. But yeah, that must be strange reconnecting with people like that. And were there any particular highlights that you uncovered when you were going through band stuff where you were like, oh yeah, that happened and that was a huge thing?
Yeah, I mean, I think those elements would have been incorporated in the actual re-releases. Like especially for we're doing another re-release with Universal of our first album with Love and Squalor, and just going through all of those old photos, I think we still look pretty good. And I tend to not look at old photos of ourselves and think, oh my God, those are little kids. But there are some photos where I'm like, those are a bunch of little dumb idiots. They don't know anything. I think that's what I see more than anything. I'm like, man, these guys don't know anything.
I would say of a lot of those bands, you and Chris seem to have been, you're saying about you're looking good then and now, but like you seem to have pretty much stayed almost the same, it seems. I don't know whether that's just from this person's perspective, but yeah, you always seem to. I don't know. It's that healthy living, I guess.
Yeah, although, or is it healthy to remain as you were in your mid 20s? I think no. I think no.
Jury's out on that one, I guess. But
Yeah, yeah.
you mentioned it just then with Love and Squalor. It only just seems like yesterday that it was 15, and now it's celebrating 20 years this year, or whatever it was, because you said it was your 50th
Right.
anniversary when it
Yeah,
was.
we've passed the 50th. I don't know what you're talking about.
So maybe this is 75 years, but it must be remarkable celebrating these milestones because I think Barbara's 15 now as well, so that must be
That's crazy. I
wild.
mean, it's funny because it does feel like we've been doing this a very long time. And like in many ways, I do think of like when I think of the arc of my life, I mostly think about We Are Scientists era. I mean, I guess I sometimes think about college, which also involved Chris Kane. But yeah, sometimes thinking that it was only like 20 years ago that When Love and Squalor came out, that seems too short a time. Yeah, that record feels like a long time ago as something that I could have produced. Like I would not make that record right now. Yeah, 20 years is a long time.
And even longer with you and Chris going back to when you guys met and pre starting the band. On that Joe Wiley show that was on this week for, was it Radio 2? You spoke about your friendship together, and whilst you are notorious for yucking it up between each other and you've got such great camaraderie, there seemed like a genuine moment where you were talking about your friendship. And that has been like a huge thing throughout the band. And like you say at the start of this interview, you have got that such a, maybe not with communication, but you have got such a great friendship, it seems. And I love that you met as well at Dawson's Creek viewing party, which really puts a date on it. So what do you think's been the key to your successful friendship all these years, having outlasted Dawson's Creek and so many of those pivotal moments?
I mean, I guess it's hard to say because I know many bands do begin as friends. And being in a band is a very good way to stop being friends with someone. I mean, just like the lifestyle of it is sort of designed to make you annoyed at other people. Just like being in close proximity. It's like having a lot of terrible roommates that you can't get away from. Like you're just on top. It's like if you had to live with the people that you went to an office and worked with for 8 hours a day, then you all went home and shared an apartment together. So it does almost seem like a miracle to not have begun finding people utterly insufferable. So I don't know. I think it's sort of a one in a million magical magical situation. I do think the fundamental part of it is that we were friends way before we ever talked about being in a band, and that the band is not the basis of our friendship. Like I think if making music together were what we had in common, that would probably not be enough to make having to hang out 24 hours a day feasible. So yeah, it seems like a pat answer, but I think just fundamentally wanting to hang out with him on my own time is the key to it. And you can't force that.
Maybe in 20 years when they're
In 20 years, I'm gonna hate this piece of shit.
we spoke you said about like living together. We spoke to David Yao of the Jesus Lizard recently, and they're in their 60s and are just still best mates.
That's
and
cool.
and we talked about the idea of living together and producing music, and I was saying that sounds like an absolute nightmare. Do you think that yours and Chris's friendship could, it seems like, because it's just a friendship free band anyway, that it could resist that?
I mean, we do essentially live together most of the time. I mean, everybody likes having their own space, so I think it's a good release valve to live in an apartment with my wife instead of Chris. But yeah, I do. I think it could. I think were that to be the necessary situation, it could withstand that.
And your wives would be very understanding, I'm sure.
Well, that would require some explaining, I think.